How did the problem become obvious to you?
Yeah, sure. So I used to run an accelerator in Montreal, Canada. And so, pretty classic stuff.
Yeah.
You experience a problem firsthand. You try to find a solution that exists, can't find it, and so you build it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's how I became artist. You've got people that need tools because they don't know how to do it, and the tools sort of help them in that process, right? So it's part tool, but it's also templates and
Mm.
what's important and all that stuff. The other interesting one is often the ones that are going to be in for second, third year, where they're ramping up. They're starting to feel the pain a bit more acutely. And now they're thinking about, okay, how can I scale my operations? Well, there's a bunch of stuff I do all the time. How can I just have a tool that allows it to repeat itself without me having to rebuild everything from scratch? Or when it comes a time where they're thinking of scaling up their operations and therefore they need more financing. And then financing will require more reporting, and reporting is hard to get from the previous sources of data where things were in Airtable and Excel spreadsheets and this and that. And so, that's these are more moments
Yeah.
in the growth of these organizations that spark the need.
Yeah.
And so we foremost, first and foremost, sort of try to look for those moments rather than a clear definition of what this is an incubator, or this is an accelerator, or this is a
Yeah.
university incubator, or this is a city accelerator. This is, we try to find that sort of sweet spot in terms of targeting.
Like, what do you find that killer feature for your product is compared to just like the cobbled together experience that people are already doing?
Yeah, I mean, there's two answers to that because um, our tool is really thought about in two different ways, like the ATS portion and then the portfolio portion.
Hmm.
Although we sell them together. But the for the ATS perspective is because it's just really fully automated. Like they get design an entire funnel of how they're going to select those candidates, and then they can pick on the what happened at each of the funnel, who's involved to evaluate what with what kind of evaluation form and what kind of scorings and the weights and the da 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 da. And then once that funnel is all built, they can also create a custom email process that let people know at each of the rounds. And then once they go through this, then it's basically chasing emails and remembering communications or whatnot versus, well, there's a reminder that's already been sent and I'm aware that it's been sent,
Right.
So that's an easy, huge utility gain. There's also some value gain out of that are more based on insights because we get data or we organize data in a more effective way. They can use that data better once they start the acceleration or incubation process. So all of the information that was gathered throughout the selection process is usually, just for selection. And then once people start, and that's it. Whereas we take all of that data and we aggregate it in a way where the coach, when they start with the startup that have been accepted, they'll have all that insights to begin with.
Mm.
And so that leverages that data and that information in a more effective manner. As a previous startup coach, I would never have suggested that anybody does that. The sort of one app that do many things is so hard to pull off because you got to do so many things, right? And it's just a lot of product for the same clientele, but it does yield a significant amount of benefit. Definitely is hard to execute. It makes our life harder to do it that way. But when the startups have access to the resources in the same place that they have access to the mentor, that they have the same access to the curriculum of what they need to do and so on, as the same place they need to report on data, well, it makes them for a better integrated experience. And that is definitely another reasons why people come to us and why people stick with us. Well, from the beginning, I always thought and still think that the real value that we're creating is, in the aggregation is the connection between different people and different organizations and different startups and different people within the community. I mean, Angelus was definitely a big influence in the original concept of it all. And so, I guess from the get-go, if I wanted to ever be able to achieve that, then I needed to build it that way.
So I'd love to go back a little bit to the beginning here before you started the company. Was being kind of a founder, starting a software company, kind of like the goal, or is it kind of the problem became so apparent that you were like, I got to go do this?
Yeah, I had done that before, and just was really passionate about it for a very long time. More in
About being a
the
founder or
program.
about doing the, like, what were you passionate about? Sorry.
Yeah. It's a web products, SaaS, was really just my passion.
Yeah.
I had another company before in the personal training industry, and other software and medical hardware company as well. And so sort of knew a little bit better what I wanted. It was web oriented. So, I was working with a lot of startups, helping them in that accelerator. And so, I wanted to get back into it. I'm hearing founders of people like and their problems and how to solve them over and over again for many years. I got frankly tired of like just not doing it myself,
Yeah.
like giving advice. I just wanted to like it's not working. Okay, let's fix it. Let's fix it together. Like I want to be part of that. I want to do things, not just give advice. And so I had the motivation to get back into being a founder, I guess, through that. And this was a problem that I really understood and was niche. I knew, but sort of still believe in the niche. And so that's how I got started. Yeah.
Yeah. What about being a founder was kind of drew you versus just kind of getting a job or, like working for somebody else, working for a small company or big company?
Yeah, well, that's the only thing I've ever done, or just about. So I started first company, I was 19, and then another one 20, and another one 22, and then I just kept on doing that
Yeah.
with a few gigs here and there, working for other people in roles that gave me a lot of freedom,
Yeah.
where allowed me to at least feel like I was part of the founding team. So yeah, that wasn't really much of a choice. It just happened. I talked to a lot of different incubators and accelerators, had the opportunity to have a pretty good relationship with one specifically that had that problem, that we're about to spend a pretty sizable amount of money into a software that existed, but that wasn't at all what they really needed. And so, basically I offered them half the price and for a 50-year license with unlimited. And then I told them I was going to be able to give them the first features within, I think it was 9 months. And so they committed. We established a few milestones of payments, but within that 9 months, they had fully paid the price. And that was how we got our first customers and budget also to get started. A lot of the product roadmap essentially got built through doing demos with leads and hearing their thoughts through the demo. And I can't sign in because I can't do this, and that's super important for me. And then you hear it too many times, you're like, damn it, okay, let's build it. And, the customization is definitely a big part of what we do. Like, there's so much that's possible to customize. And so that was built through having just a variety of customers and not wanting to hard code anything and just let's put a button, let's put an option, let's put this one at a time.
Was there advice that you gave that you normally give as a kind of mentoring coach that you found difficult to follow yourself, kind of going down this journey?
Oh yeah, tons.
Like
Yeah.
what?
Like there's moments you get comfortable as a founder and you think things is finally getting around, and then you sort of like lower your guard a little bit, and then you shouldn't. So that rigor and that that applies in whether it's managing cash flow or the way you're hiring, and being super conscious and thoughtful about how you're hiring, or like in just a lot of different ways, right? And I guess my weakness, is that I'll have that rigor and it'll be fine and I'll feel it's good, and then I'll lower my guard a little bit, and then oh shit, I made that mistake, and then I have to go back into that. And especially as a sole founder, no investor, nobody to like, it's just my team and I. So it's has that challenge. And then the thing I said, I would never recommend anybody to build a large product for a small customer segment. That just makes no sense. Which is exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So
Talk to me about bootstrapping. So you mentioned you bootstrapped the company. Was this kind of like a decision that you strategized, or is this kind of like why did you decide to bootstrap versus going out and raising?
yeah. So one, I was fortunate enough that I had a job in an accelerator. I was director of programs for an accelerator that paid me really well. And so I had some extra cash to be able to do that. So that was part of this. Second, I had some initial funding from the sales I was doing. And so, the first milestones, I didn't need financing, or I didn't want to. I wanted to prove something, and then I was going to go and get second milestones and maybe get financings, but turns out I didn't need it either. And then after that, there was a gap where I was like, okay, I need to actually get some financing for this. And I started to put some energy into it. And I quickly realized like this isn't going to work. I don't think that people are going to believe that the market is big enough. And I think I'm going to waste a whole lot of time. Maybe it'll work, but the time I'm going to put into doing this versus the time I can put in getting sales, I think the outcome might be the same in terms of numbers. And obviously I prefer the sales than the financing. So let's go for that instead. And sort of reanalyze that thought year after year. Like, should I raise? Should I go and do that? And every time I go back to let's go get more sales.
Any ups? I mean, like, so are there pros and cons? I mean, obviously the cons of bootstrapping is like, you're putting your own money in and everything else, but like, are there other pros and cons that aren't as obvious being kind of a bootstrap founder versus going out and raising money?
Yeah, you have to be tighter in your hiring. Can't give the same kind of budgets that, if you have a bunch of cash in the bank. You have to plan a lot more for your cash flow, right? So our business is somewhat seasonal. So there's definitely peaks in September, October. There's peaks in January, February, and then April, May, and then June, July, August. There's really not much going on. You got an ARR where people are paying upfront at the beginning of the year. That means there's like 3 months. There's not much coming in. You got to plan for that. right? So there's examples of that for sure. That's more difficult than if you just have like a lump of money that's just there.
Talk to me a little bit about your kind of hiring. So how did you kind of put together that initial team, especially given that you're bootstrapped and have to be a little bit more careful with runway and everything?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess that's all you guys know of us. I mean, we've been like recruiting on AngelList slash Wellfound for multiple years. And that allowed us to reach a broad set of people that have various skills in various locations and to maximize the match for the affinity with the business and the affinity with the team and the skill sets that we needed, as opposed to where they were located. Yeah, so that for sure was a big reasons of our ability to do it and to scale and to have a good hiring process.
I'd love to understand, especially when you're an early stage company, you're competing against a lot of different people to kind of hire, right? And like, were there things that you guys did to kind of stand out and get
Mm.
the talent you need, or were there things you did to kind of go after talent pools that maybe were undiscovered? Because I think like early stage companies just have to be different in their hiring than like someone who's, already a brand name or has a ton of money or something.
So one, I mean, I want real feedback and I want real discussions in my team. I don't like authority and I have a very flat structure and that definitely um, there's a certain set of people in the world that really want that.
Mm.
And there's not that many people that actually do it. Like there's a lot of people that say they do, but then, they'll try to put their foot down on things. I like to have very open discussions. Anybody in the team can bring up anything. And so that definitely inspires people. And there's a lot of people that want to work, that when they start working with us, they're at the beginning, they're scared
Yeah.
because we're asking a lot of them. But eventually they really like it and they don't want to go elsewhere. And then they, connect their friends and their people and the people they've worked with before and so on. So that I think is not so much a recruiting strategy. It's more like not having a leaky bucket, but of uh, employee. We haven't had any churn, zero
That's very cool.
in the last 2.5 years, like
Yeah.
zero. And then we do like when people apply, again, we use our own system. We have our own ATS, right? So people apply through our system. And so we have some sometimes very basic question in the form then they submit that allows us to be more efficient. And then when we go through the interview, then we've segmented out people we can't afford and people that don't have enough competence. And then we're left with what is the right fit, and that's what we
Yeah.
interview for.
Awesome.